The city had become unbearable. The constant noise, the crowds, the grime, it was suffocating. I yearned for peace, for tranquility. So I packed my bags and left, seeking refuge in the quiet countryside. My new home was a charming cottage, nestled amidst rolling hills and whispering willows. For a while it was idyllic. The air was fresh, the silence soothing. Then the alarm started. Every night, at precisely 2:07 a.m., it would blare from an abandoned house at the edge of the village. The piercing sound sliced through the quiet night, shattering the peace I craved. I tried to ignore it, to block it out, but it was relentless, a constant reminder that something was amiss. Curiosity gnawed at me, growing stronger with each passing night. I had to know what was behind that incessant alarm. One night, unable to bear the suspense any longer, I decided to investigate. A blanket of fog had settled over the village, shrouding it in an eerie silence. The air was thick with moisture and the smell of damp earth. I walked with a growing sense of unease, my heart pounding in my chest. The abandoned house loomed before me, a skeletal silhouette against the moonlit sky. The rusty gate creaked open with a groan, as if warning me away. I stepped onto the overgrown path, my footsteps muffled by the damp grass. As I approached the house, I noticed a figure, standing in the shadows of the porch. A shiver ran down my spine. He was tall and gaunt, with a face etched with deep lines. His eyes, dark and piercing, seemed to bore into me, reading my thoughts.
Looking for something?
He rasped, his voice hoarse as if unused for years. I stumbled over my words, explaining about the alarm, hoping I didn't sound as foolish as I felt.
It's Jerry, he forgets.
Jerry, I later learned, was his brother, a recluse who lived in the abandoned house. He suffered from some unnamed ailment that clouded his mind, causing him to forget he'd set the alarm. The old man, whose name I never learned, cared for him, bearing the burden of his brother's condition with quiet resignation. He apologized for the disturbance, his voice a low rumble. I left feeling a strange mix of relief and unease. The alarm was explained, but something about the old man, the way he looked at me, left me with a lingering sense of disquiet. The next night the alarm remained silent, but the peace I had hoped for was gone, replaced by a growing sense of foreboding. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong. The silence of the countryside, once a balm to my city-weary soul, now pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. The encounter with the old man played on my mind, his words echoing in my ears. He forgets. It was a simple explanation, logical, yet it did little to quell the unease that had taken root within me. Sleep, when it came, was plagued by vivid nightmares. I would jolt awake, heart pounding, the chilling sensation of being watched clinging to me like cobwebs. The whispers started subtly. At first I dismissed them as the wind whistling through the eaves, playing tricks on my frayed nerves. But as the nights passed, they grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, sibilant whispers that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't make out the words, but their tone was undeniable, a chilling blend of amusement and malice. One particularly windy night, as the old house creaked and groaned under the onslaught, I heard it. Clear as day, a child's voice, high and sweet, cut through the whispers. It was singing a simple nursery rhyme, but the innocence of the tune did little to soothe my fear. It only amplified it, turning my blood to ice. The next morning I awoke with a start, the memory of the child's voice vivid in my mind. Had I imagined it? A figment of my overactive imagination, fueled by stress and lack of sleep? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, a trick of the wind, but deep down a seed of dread had been sown. Later that day, while walking back from the village store, I saw her, a little girl, no more than 7 or 8, swinging on a rusty swing set in the old man's yard. Her long, dark hair billowed in the wind, and she giggled as she swung higher and higher. My breath caught in my throat. The old man had no children. I was sure of it. Hesitantly, I approached the gate, my heart pounding in my chest. The little girl stopped swinging and turned to face me, her eyes, large and dark, fixed on me with unnerving intensity. "Hello," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's your name?"
Susie, she replied, her voice sweet and high-pitched. Wanna play?
I declined, making an excuse about needing to get home. As I turned to leave, I felt her eyes on my back, cold and piercing. That night, the whispers returned, louder than ever, and I could have sworn I heard Susie's laughter woven into the wind, chilling me to the bone. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, haunted by whispers, a spectral child, and a growing sense of dread that clung to me like a shroud. Sleep offered no escape, only vivid, terrifying dreams that left me trembling at dawn. One evening, the old man appeared at my door, his face etched with a mixture of concern and warning.
You've seen her, he stated, his voice raspy but laced with an undercurrent of fear.
I nodded, unable to speak, my throat constricted with terror.
Susie, he continued, she's special. She doesn't like to be ignored.
His words sent a fresh wave of fear washing over me. What does she want? I whispered, my voice trembling. The old man's eyes held mine, his gaze intense.
She wants to play, he said, his voice barely a whisper. And you must let her. Don't make her upset. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. She can be very persuasive, he added, his voice barely audible. No one refuses Susie.
That night, Susie appeared in my house. I lay frozen in my bed, feigning sleep as she drifted around my room, her laughter a chilling melody in the darkness. From then on, she was a constant presence in my life. She would appear at random times, demanding to play games, to tell stories, to be entertained. Her requests were always simple, childish even, yet there was an underlying current of menace to them, a silent threat that hung heavy in the air. I quickly learned that the old man wasn't exaggerating. The villagers, they all knew about Susie, and they all obeyed. They indulged her whims, played her games, and lived in fear of her displeasure. I discovered that the village had a long history with Susie, a dark secret that had haunted them for generations. Susie wasn't a normal child. She was something else, an entity, a force of nature, they whispered. She had been bound to the village long ago, and her happiness, or rather her lack of displeasure, was the price they paid for their continued existence. I was trapped, just another pawn in Susie's twisted games, and the worst part, I was starting to enjoy playing with her.